The red warning lights flashed across Earth's deep space communication array as Commander Lisa Torres stared at her screen in complete shock. After decades of listening to empty space, humanity had finally received its first alien message. This wasn't the peaceful first contact everyone had dreamed about. This was a cry for help that made her blood run cold. The transmission crackled through the quantum receivers, filled with static and desperation. The alien voices sounded like wind chimes caught in a storm, beautiful but terrifying. Through the universal translator, their words painted a picture of absolute horror. The Vethany Republic, a peaceful collection of different alien species, was being wiped out completely by something called the Korthok Horde. Torres had been working the night shift for 3 years, mostly listening to cosmic background radiation. In the occasional space junk, nothing had prepared her for this moment. She quickly recorded everything and sent an emergency alert to Admiral Jake Morrison at Earth Defense Command. Her hand shook as she typed the report. First contact with aliens, and they were begging for help against monsters that ate both metal. In living flesh, the alien message kept repeating on a loop. Torres listened to it over and over, trying to understand the full scope of what was happening. The Vethany described creatures the size of skyscrapers that moved through space like a living nightmare. These Korthok things didn't just kill, they consumed everything. Entire cities, spaceships, even the ground itself disappeared into their massive mouths within 6 hours. Admiral Morrison had assembled Earth's top military leaders in the emergency command center deep beneath Colorado. The room buzzed with nervous energy as scientists and generals tried to process humanity's first contact with alien life. Dr. Patricia Wells, the lead xenobiologist, presented her analysis of the Vethany physiology data that came with the message. The aliens were nothing like humans expected. They came from worlds with gravity 3 times weaker than Earth's. Their atmosphere was so thin that a human could barely breathe it. Their bones were hollow like birds, and their skin was translucent. These weren't the tough, battle-ready aliens from science fiction movies. They were delicate, beautiful creatures who had evolved on worlds that humans would consider paradise. Admiral Torres explained during the briefing, their defense ships aren't really weapons at all. They're more like art pieces that float through space. The Vethany have been peaceful for thousands of years. They trade, create beautiful things, and study the universe. They've never had to fight for survival like we have on Earth. Recording played again in the command center. The alien voices spoke of their colonies going dark one by one. They described watching their families consumed by creatures that seemed to come from nightmares. The Korthok moved from system to system like a plague, leaving nothing behind but empty space and broken dreams. Morrison studied the star charts showing the alien coordinates. 200 light-years away, an entire civilization was dying while humanity listened to their final screams. The Vethany had sent their message to every corner of the galaxy, hoping someone, anyone, would answer their call for help. The most heartbreaking part came at the end of the message. The aliens promised to pay anything, rare metals advanced, technology, even their most precious artworks, to whoever could save them. But their voices carried no hope. They had already accepted that they were going to die. This wasn't a request for military alliance or trade negotiation. This was a final goodbye from a dying people. Torres looked around the command center at the faces of Earth's military leadership. She could see the same thought in everyone's eyes. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew the answer. And their first alien neighbors were being slaughtered by monsters beyond imagination. The weight of first contact pressed down on everyone in the room. This wasn't how anyone had imagined meeting other intelligent life. Admiral Morrison stood in the war room staring at the holographic display showing Earth's available military assets. 72 hours had passed since the alien distress call, and he knew every minute of delay meant more innocent lives lost to the Korthok monsters. But Morrison wasn't just planning a rescue mission, he was preparing to introduce the galaxy to something it had never seen before: humans at war. The selection process for Task Force Reaper wasn't about finding the best soldiers. It was about finding the survivors. Morrison needed people who had looked death in the eye on Earth and walked away laughing. He started with Colonel Mike Bradley, a man who had spent 15 years training troops in Australia's Death Valley region. Bradley's soldiers learned to fight in temperatures that could kill a person in minutes, where water was more valuable than gold, and every creature was designed to end human life. Captain Anna Walsh came from the Siberian Arctic Warfare Division, where soldiers learned to operate in conditions so cold that metal would shatter like glass. Her troops could survive for weeks in blizzards that turned the landscape into a white hell. They fought mock battles at 60 degrees below zero, where exposed skin would freeze solid in seconds and equipment failed regularly. Commander Tom Rivera represented the deep ocean, military operations. The crazy people who fought underwater battles in crushing darkness miles beneath the surface. His Marines wore armor that could withstand pressure that would instantly flatten most living things. They operated in an environment where a single mistake meant being crushed like an empty can or drowning in absolute darkness. These weren't just military units. They were proof that humans could adapt to environments that would kill most life forms instantly. Morrison realized something that made him smile grimly. Earth wasn't just humanity's home planet. It was a training ground that had been preparing them for galactic warfare without them even knowing it. The holoconference connected. Morrison with his chosen commanders scattered across Earth's most hostile environments. With the Australian desert stretching behind him, the air shimmering with heat that could cook a person alive. Walsh's transmission came from a frozen wasteland, where the wind howled like a living thing and snow fell horizontally. Rivera's signal originated from a research station floating above an ocean trench so deep that the pressure could crush submarines. "Listen up," Morrison began, his voice cutting through the static of long-distance communications. "We're not just rescuing aliens today. We're showing the galaxy what happens when you mess with someone under human protection. These Korthok things have been bullying peaceful species for thousands of years, because nobody ever fought back hard enough." The analysis of alien military technology had been eye-opening and somewhat depressing. The Vethany defense ships were beautiful works of art that could barely qualify as weapons. Their energy beams were designed to disable rather than destroy, reflecting a civilization that had forgotten how to wage real war. Other galactic species had similarly gentle approaches to conflict. Treating warfare like a formal dance with rules and limitations, Captain Walsh studied the tactical reports with the cold efficiency of someone who had survived Earth's worst conditions. "Admiral, these Korthok creatures have never faced anything like us. Every other species in the galaxy evolved on garden worlds where survival was easy. They developed civilization without the constant threat of extinction that shaped humanity. We're not just another spacefaring race. We're the product of a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill us." Morrison nodded, understanding. The implications? Earth had been humanity's enemy long before they reached the stars. Volcanic eruptions, ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic winters, plague outbreaks, and natural disasters had repeatedly brought humans to the edge of extinction. Each time they had survived by becoming tougher, smarter, and more ruthless. What other species saw as a beautiful blue world, humans knew as a death world disguised as paradise. The loading process for Task Force Reaper took place across multiple orbital shipyards, and the weapons being installed would have horrified galactic civilizations. Kinetic penetrators that could punch through solid metal like tissue paper, plasma charges that burned hotter than most stars, nuclear torpedoes that could vaporize entire city blocks. Retress. The moment Task Force Reaper dropped out of hyperspace, every human aboard felt their blood turn to ice. The scene before them was worse than any nightmare. 3 beautiful worlds that had once sparkled with alien cities now looked like barren rocks. The Korthok had stripped them completely clean, leaving behind nothing but bare stone and empty space where civilizations had flourished for thousands of years. On the 4th planet, the destruction was happening in real time. Admiral Morrison watched through the ship's view screen as creatures the size of mountains moved across the surface like living earthquakes. The Korthok weren't just killing the aliens, they were eating everything. Its buildings, vehicles, trees. Even the soil itself disappeared into massive mouths lined with teeth like broken glass. It was systematic, efficient, and absolutely horrifying. The surviving Vethany defense ships looked like delicate crystal sculptures floating helplessly around their dying world. Their weapons fired streams of beautiful blue energy that seemed to tickle the Korthok creatures rather than harm them. Morrison could see the alien ships desperately trying to protect evacuation transports. But their gentle technology was completely useless against monsters that had evolved to consume entire civilizations. Commander Lisa Torres, now serving as the fleet's communication officer, intercepted the alien radio chatter. The Vethany voices were filled with despair and resignation. They were saying goodbye to each other, preparing to die with dignity as their species faced extinction. Many of them were apologizing to their children for failing to protect them from the nightmare consuming their world, Admiral reported. Captain Anna Walsh from her position at the tactical station. I'm reading over 200 Korthok creatures on the planet's surface, with more emerging from underground burrows. The largest specimens are approximately 800 meters long and 300 meters wide. They're covered in natural armor that appears to be several meters thick. Morrison studied the tactical display with the cold focus of a predator. Sizing up its prey, Korthok moved with the confidence of creatures that had never faced serious resistance. They ignored the Vethany weapon fire completely, treating the desperate alien defenders like annoying insects. These monsters had been the undisputed masters of the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be afraid. All ships. This is Admiral Morrison, he announced over the fleet communication system. What you're seeing down? There is genocide. These creatures have been bullying peaceful species across the galaxy because nobody ever hit back hard enough. Today that changes. Today they meet humans. All ships, weapons free. Show these things what Earth breeds. The response was immediate and devastating. 20 human warships opened fire simultaneously, and the galaxy learned what weapons designed by a Deathworld species looked like in action. Railguns fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds, punching through Korthok armor like it was made of paper. The creatures that had seemed invincible moments before suddenly found themselves bleeding and screaming as human kinetic rounds tore massive holes through their bodies. Nuclear torpedoes followed the railgun barrage, each one carrying enough destructive power to level an entire city. When they detonated against Korthok creatures, the explosions could be seen from orbit. Beings the size of skyscrapers simply vanished in balls of nuclear fire, leaving nothing behind but radioactive craters and the shocked silence of a galaxy that had never witnessed such devastating warfare. The surviving Vethany ships stopped firing their own weapons and just watched in stunned amazement. These newcomers, these humans, were fighting with a level of violence that their peaceful minds could barely comprehend. The elegant alien commanders found themselves both grateful and terrified as they realized they were being rescued by creatures that might be even more dangerous than the Korthok themselves. Commander Tom Rivera's Marines, deployed from assault ships in powered armor that could operate in the vacuum of space. They landed on the planet's surface and began hunting down Korthok creatures in close combat, fighting in conditions that would instantly kill most galactic species. The human soldiers moved through toxic atmospheres and crushing gravity like they were taking a pleasant walk, systematically eliminating monsters with weapons that fired explosive rounds designed to tear apart armored targets. Retrace. After rescuing the Vethany homeworld, Admiral Morrison made a decision that would change galactic history forever. The human fleet didn't pack up and go home like heroes in old stories. Instead, Morrison looked at his tactical display and said, something that made his officers smile with predatory satisfaction. We're going hunting. The Korthok had retreated after their first defeat in recorded history, but Morrison knew they would return eventually. These creatures had spent 10,000 years terrorizing peaceful civilizations because nobody had ever followed them home. To finish the job, Earth's children were about to teach the galaxy a new lesson about how apex predators should be handled, using tracking technology that combined human military innovation with captured Korthok biosignatures. Task Force Reaper followed the fleeing monsters across 3 star systems. The trail led to a place that made even hardened human soldiers pause in amazement, a radioactive nebula that glowed with deadly energy, surrounding a cluster of dead stars where no normal life could survive. Commander Lisa Torres analyzed the sensor readings with growing excitement. "Admiral, we're looking at their main breeding ground. The radiation levels in there would kill most galactic species in minutes. But it's exactly the kind of environment these things need to reproduce. They've been using this place as their safe haven for thousands of years." Captain Mike Bradley studied the tactical scans of what lay hidden in the radioactive cloud. Massive Korthok hive ships, each one the size of a small asteroid, drifted through the deadly nebula like sleeping giants. These weren't just transport vessels. They were living nurseries where the next generation of galaxy-devouring monsters was being bred and raised. Sir Bradley reported to Morrison. "I'm reading at least 50 major hive ships in there, plus hundreds of smaller breeding pods. If we let them finish their reproduction cycle, they'll come back with 10 times the numbers we faced at the Vethany worlds. We need to go in there and end this permanently." Morrison nodded grimly. The nebula's radiation levels would be lethal to any other species in the galaxy. But humans had learned to fight in environments that actively tried to kill them. Their ships were designed to operate in the vacuum of space. Their armor could handle radiation that would sterilize entire worlds, and their weapons worked perfectly in conditions that would shut down more delicate technology. The human assault fleet entered the radioactive nebula like sharks swimming into a school of fish. The Korthok hive ships detected the approaching threat and began to wake up. But they moved with the sluggish confidence of creatures that had never been challenged in their own territory. They had no idea what was coming for them. Bradley led the first boarding party personally, taking his Marines directly into the heart of the largest hive ship. The environment inside was absolutely nightmarish, crushing gravity that would flatten normal humans. Toxic atmosphere that burned like acid and radiation levels that could cook living tissue in seconds. But Bradley's troops had trained in Australia's Death Valley and survived conditions that other species considered impossible. "Remember, boys," Bradley transmitted to his Marines as they moved through the alien ship's twisted corridors. "We evolved alongside saber-toothed tigers, plague bacteria, and volcanic eruptions. These bugs have been the biggest, baddest things in the galaxy for so long that they forgot what real competition looks like." The Marines moved through the hive ship like a virus attacking a body, systematically placing antimatter charges in critical locations. The Korthok defenders they encountered seemed confused and disorganized, as if they couldn't understand how any living thing could survive in their toxic environment. Their attacks were powerful but clumsy, designed for overwhelming weak prey rather than fighting disciplined soldiers. Human forces spread throughout the breeding ground, hitting multiple hive ships simultaneously. Each team carried enough antimatter, explosives to turn an asteroid into cosmic dust, and they placed their charges with the precision of professional exterminators. The Korthok nurseries, where millions of baby monsters were growing in radioactive pools, received special attention from human demolition experts. The explosions began exactly on schedule, turning the nebula into a fireworks display visible from several star systems away. 6 months after the destruction of the Korthok breeding grounds, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. For the first time in recorded memory, representatives from 63 different alien species gathered in one place, not to discuss trade agreements or territorial disputes, but to meet the mysterious newcomers who had accomplished the impossible. They came to Vethany Prime to shake hands with humanity, the only species that had ever looked at the galaxy's ultimate nightmare, and decided to hunt it down. The gathering was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Elegant crystal. Beings from low-gravity worlds floated alongside gas-breathing entities from high-pressure planets, silicon-based life forms that communicated through light patterns. Mingled with creatures so alien that human scientists needed special equipment just to detect their presence. What brought them all together was simple curiosity and overwhelming gratitude toward the strange new species that had saved them all from eventual extinction. Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the alien assembly wearing his dress uniform, and every alien representative who saw him felt a mixture of awe and barely controlled fear. The scars on his face and hands told stories of battles fought in environments that would instantly kill most of the beings in attendance. His calm confidence radiated the unmistakable presence of a predator who had looked death in the eye and walked away victorious. Captain Anna Walsh and Commander Tom Rivera flanked Morrison, their own uniforms displaying medals earned in combat conditions that defied galactic understanding. Walsh's left arm bore burn marks from fighting in temperatures that would melt most metals. Rivera's breathing apparatus showed damage from operating in atmospheric conditions that were essentially liquid poison to normal life forms. The alien representatives studied these humans with fascination and deep concern. Every species in the galaxy had developed their military technology with the understanding that warfare should be civilized, limited, and ultimately survivable for both sides. The humans had approached the Korthok problem with a level of systematic violence that challenged everything galactic civilization thought it knew about conflict resolution. Dr. Zenth of the Crystalline Confederacy, a being whose body resembled Living Diamond, approached Morrison with movements that suggested extreme caution. "Admiral Morrison," the alien said through a translation device, "our analysis of your combat recordings shows weapons and tactics that our civilizations banned thousands of years ago as too destructive for civilized beings to use. How do you justify such methods?" Morrison considered the question carefully before answering. The assembled aliens waited in tense silence for his response, unsure whether they were speaking to their savior or their next potential threat. Dr. Roost, "Zenth, with respect, your civilizations banned those weapons because you never faced anything that required them. The Korthok weren't interested in civilized warfare. They wanted to eat your entire species. Sometimes survival requires tools that peaceful people find uncomfortable." The explanation rippled through the assembly in waves of translated whispers. Many alien species began to understand for the first time that humans came from a completely different evolutionary background. While they had developed civilization on worlds where survival was relatively easy, humanity had been forged in constant competition with a planet that actively tried to kill them every single day. Captain Lisa Weiss Torres, now wearing the new title of humanity's first galactic liaison, stepped forward to address the growing concerns. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had coordinated humanity's first successful interstellar military operation, but also the warmth of someone who genuinely cared about the diverse life forms surrounding her. "Representatives of the galactic community," Torres began, her words being simultaneously translated into dozens of alien languages. "I want you to understand something important about humanity. Yes, we come from what you would call a death world. We've developed weapons and tactics that seem extreme by your standards. But Earth taught us something that I think you've forgotten in your peaceful civilizations." The assembly leaned forward, hanging on her every word. Torres smiled, and somehow that expression managed to be both reassuring and slightly terrifying at the same time. "Earth taught us that survival requires strength, but civilization requires compassion. We'll stand guard so others don't have to. We'll be the monsters that hunt monsters, so that peaceful species like yourselves can continue creating art, exploring science, and building the beautiful cultures that make this galaxy worth protecting. Retroclad can make mistakes. Please, double-check responses."